The altimeter spins backward. The throttle is wide open. A 20-year-old pilot named Ensign Robert Burnell pulls too hard, too early. His Hellcat shudders. His wingmen scatter. Below him, 3 Japanese Zeros bank hard into the sunlight. He's falling toward them at the wrong angle, the wrong speed, in the wrong formation. His squadron leader radios something sharp. Burnell doesn't hear it. He's already committed. What happens in the next 11 seconds will rewrite fighter doctrine across the Pacific, and no one will believe it was an accident. It is late October, 1944. The skies over Leyte Gulf belong to no one. American carriers push westward into Philippine waters. Japanese air power, once unmatched, now fights from improvised airstrips and dwindling fuel reserves. But the Zero is still lethal, still fast, still flown by men who learned to fly before the war began. The USS Intrepid steams through gray swells. Her flight deck hums with activity. Mechanics kneel beside Hellcat fighters, torquing bolts and checking ammunition belts. Fuel trucks roll between rows of aircraft. The air smells of salt, oil, and exhaust fumes thick enough to taste. Pilots gather in the ready room below deck. Some write letters. Others sleep sitting up, helmets balanced on their knees. A few study silhouettes of enemy aircraft pinned to corkboard, profiles of the Zero, the Oscar, the Tony, names that sound harmless until you see them closing at 300 knots. Ensign Robert Burnell sits near the back. He is 20 years old. Brown hair, narrow shoulders, hands that still look too young to wear a wedding ring. He grew up in Oregon, the son of a school teacher and a freight clerk. He joined the Navy 2 years ago, finished flight training in San Diego, and arrived aboard Intrepid 6 weeks earlier. He has logged 43 carrier landings, 18 combat missions, 0 confirmed kills. His squadron mates call him Bernie, not out of affection, out of habit. He doesn't talk much, doesn't drink, doesn't play cards. He writes letters to his wife every night, short and careful, the kind of letters that say nothing about fear. In training, his instructors noted 2 things. First, he had excellent reflexes. Second, he overthought his dives. He hesitated at the top of attack runs, recalculating angles while others committed. One instructor wrote in his file that Burnell flew like a mathematician in a dogfight, technically sound but slow to pull the trigger. Now he sits in a steel room beneath a floating runway, waiting for the horn that will send him into the air. Around him, veterans crack jokes. They've seen men like Burnell before, quiet, steady, unremarkable, the kind who either wash out or surprise everyone. No one expects the latter. The horn sounds. Pilots rise in unison. They file toward the ladder, boots clanging on metal grating. On deck, the wind is stronger than it looked from below. Burnell pulls his goggles down and climbs into his Hellcat. The cockpit smells like gasoline and hot metal. He runs through the checklist by memory: fuel, flaps, guns armed. The engine coughs, then roars. The propeller blurs into silver light. One by one, the fighters roll forward. Burnell's turn comes. He pushes the throttle. The Hellcat accelerates, tail lifting, wheels drumming across the deck. The bow rushes toward him. Then air. The horizon tilts. The carrier falls away below. His squadron forms up in loose formation. 12 Hellcats climbing into broken cloud cover. Their mission is simple: sweep ahead of the fleet and clear the sky of Japanese aircraft. If they find bombers, they engage. If they find fighters, they engage. If they find nothing, they orbit and wait. Radio chatter is minimal. The squadron leader, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, calls out headings and altitudes. His voice is steady, clipped. A man who's done this 50 times. Burnell listens and adjusts his trim. His wingman, a Texan named Kowalski, flies 100 yards off his right wing. They climb through 8,000 feet. The air grows colder. Burnell's breath fogs the inside of his canopy. He wipes it with his glove. Then the radio crackles. Contact. Bearing 270, multiple bandits inbound. Hayes orders the squadron into combat spread. The Hellcats peel into pairs, increasing distance between each element. Burnell and Kowalski swing left, eyes scanning the horizon. There, high and distant, a shimmer of reflected sunlight, then shapes. 3 zeros in a loose V, descending fast toward the American formation. Hayes calls the intercept. The squadron begins a climbing turn to meet them head-on. Standard doctrine. Gain altitude, extend, then dive with speed advantage. The Hellcat is heavier than the Zero, but faster in a dive. The key is to strike once and disengage before the Zero can turn. Burnell pulls back on the stick. His altimeter climbs. 9,000 feet, 10,000. His engine strains. The Zeros grow larger. They're not turning away. They're committing. Hayes calls for the attack. The Hellcats roll inverted and dive. If this history matters to you, tap like and subscribe. Burnell rolls later than the others. Not by much, half a second, maybe less. But it's enough to throw off his angle. His nose drops too steeply. His airspeed builds faster than planned. The Zero formation is below him now, not ahead. He pulls the stick back to correct, but the Hellcat is already committed to the dive. The controls stiffen as speed increases. His vision tunnels. He's no longer diving toward the Zeros. He's diving past them. Kowalski radios something urgent. Burnell doesn't process it. His brain is locked on one task, recovering the dive without blacking out. The altimeter unwinds. 8,000 feet. 7,000. The Zeros flash past his canopy, close enough to see the red circles on their wings. Then instinct takes over. He doesn't climb out. He keeps diving. He kicks the rudder hard left and drops the nose further, angling beneath the Zero formation. His airspeed climbs past 400 knots. The Hellcat shudders. Wind screams over the wings. The Zeros react. They break formation, trying to follow, but Burnell is already below them, arcing downward in a spiraling descent that no one taught him and no manual describes. He's not attacking. He's falling. But he's falling with purpose. At 4,000 feet, he levels out. The Zeros are above him now, silhouetted against the sky. They're turning, trying to reacquire him. But they've lost their energy. They dove to follow him, and now they're slow, separated, vulnerable. Burnell pulls hard on the stick. The Hellcat climbs in a steep, arcing turn. G-forces pin him into his seat. His vision grays at the edges. He keeps pulling. The Hellcat claws upward, nose rising toward the nearest Zero. The Japanese pilot sees him too late. He tries to turn. But Burnell is already inside his radius, rising toward him from below at an impossible angle. Burnell's thumb finds the trigger. 650 caliber guns erupt. Tracers arc upward. The Zero shudders. Pieces of aluminum tear away from its fuselage. Black smoke pours from the engine. The Zero rolls inverted and falls. Burnell doesn't watch. He's already turning toward the second Zero. His airspeed is dropping. The Hellcat is heavy, sluggish at the top of the climb, but he has position. The second Zero tries to dive away. Burnell leads it, firing a long burst. The bullets walk across the Zero's wing root. Fuel ignites. The wing folds. The aircraft tumbles. The third Zero is turning hard, trying to get behind him. But Burnell is still climbing. He pulls the stick into his gut and kicks the rudder. The Hellcat skids sideways in the air, nose swinging around. It's ugly. It's inefficient. It violates every principle of energy management. But it puts his guns on target. He fires. The third Zero explodes in mid-air. 11 seconds. 3 kills. 0 ammunition remaining. Burnell rolls wings level. His hands are shaking. His heart hammers in his chest. The radio is screaming. Hayes is calling his name. Kowalski is asking if he's hit. Burnell's breath comes in short, ragged gasps. He keys the mic. His voice is quiet. He tells them he's okay, but he doesn't understand what just happened. Neither does anyone else. The squadron returns to the Intrepid in silence. Not the silence of failure, the silence of disbelief. Burnell traps without incident. His Hellcat rolls to a stop. Deck crew swarm the aircraft. One mechanic climbs onto the wing and looks at Burnell through the canopy. He signals thumbs up. Burnell nods. He shuts down the engine and climbs out. His legs feel weak. His flight suit is soaked with sweat. He pulls off his helmet and stands on the wing, staring at nothing. Hayes lands 2 minutes later. He climbs out of his cockpit and walks directly toward Burnell. His expression is unreadable. Other pilots gather. Kowalski lands last, taxiing past Burnell's plane, with his hand raised in a gesture that might be congratulations or confusion. Hayes stops in front of Burnell. He asks what the hell that was. Burnell doesn't have an answer. He explains that he dove too steep, lost position, and tried to recover. He didn't plan the maneuver, he reacted. Hayes stares at him. Then he tells Burnell to report to the intelligence officer immediately. Every detail, every angle, every second. The debriefing lasts an hour. Burnell sits in a cramped office with a Navy lieutenant who takes notes in shorthand. Burnell walks through the engagement step by step. The lieutenant interrupts frequently. He asks about altitude, airspeed, G-forces, angle of attack. Burnell estimates as best he can. The lieutenant asks if Burnell has ever practiced this maneuver before. Burnell says no. The lieutenant asks if anyone taught it to him. Burnell says no. The lieutenant leans back and taps his pencil against the desk. He tells Burnell that what he described is tactically unsound. Diving past an enemy formation sacrifices altitude and speed, the only advantages a Hellcat has over a Zero. Climbing back into a fight from below is suicide. The Zeros should have shredded him. Burnell agrees. They should have. But they didn't. The intelligence officer files the report and sends Burnell back to his quarters. That night, Burnell writes a letter to his wife. He doesn't mention the kills. He tells her the weather is clear and the food is better than last week. 2 days later, Hayes calls him into the ready room. 3 other pilots are present. Hayes spreads a hand-drawn diagram across the table. It's a crude sketch of the engagement. Burnell's dive, the Zero positions, the firing angles. Hayes explains that the air group commander reviewed the report. He wants Burnell to replicate the maneuver during the next squadron training flight. Not in combat, in controlled airspace, with altitude to spare. Burnell asks why. Hayes tells him the commander thinks Burnell stumbled onto something, a way to attack from below without getting trapped in a climbing fight. If it works under controlled conditions, it might be teachable. Burnell says it was a mistake. Hayes replies that most innovations are. The test flight launches 3 days later. Clear skies, light wind, no enemy contact expected. Burnell climbs to 12,000 feet with 2 wingmen. Hayes orbits above, observing. The plan is simple. Burnell will dive past 2 Hellcats simulating enemy fighters, recover below them, and attempt a climbing attack from underneath. Burnell rolls inverted and dives. The Hellcats above him hold position. He plunges past them, airspeed building. At 6,000 feet, he begins the pull. The aircraft shudders, his vision tunnels. He kicks the rudder and pulls harder. The Hellcat arcs upward in a tight, spiraling climb. The maneuver is brutal. The airframe groans. Burnell's vision grays, then clears. He levels out beneath the simulated enemy, gun camera running. The film shows a clean shot, perfect deflection. If this were combat, both targets would be dead. Hayes radios him to repeat it. Burnell climbs back to altitude and dives again. Same result. The 3rd attempt is cleaner. By the 4th, Burnell is refining the entry angle, adjusting rudder pressure to tighten the spiral. They land. The film is reviewed immediately. The air group commander watches it 3 times without speaking. Then he orders the maneuver added to the squadron training syllabus. He gives it a name: the underslung spiral. Not every pilot can fly it. The G-forces are punishing. The timing is precise. Misjudge the pull, and you auger into the ocean. Misjudge the climb, and you stall in front of the enemy. But for those who master it, the maneuver offers something doctrine does not: a way to attack a faster, more maneuverable opponent from a position of apparent disadvantage. Within 2 weeks, 3 other pilots score kills using variations of Burnell's dive. One of them, a lieutenant named Driscoll, drops a 0 at close range during a fleet defense mission. His gun camera footage is circulated among the carrier air groups. The maneuver spreads. Not officially, not through formal channels. It spreads the way most battlefield innovations spread, through observation, imitation, and desperation. By December, pilots across Task Force 38 are experimenting with underslung spirals. Some fail, some die trying, but enough succeed that the tactic becomes part of the informal playbook. Burnell himself uses it twice more. Both times he escapes unscathed. Both times the enemy doesn't. The war moves forward. The carriers push deeper into Japanese-held waters. The air battles grow fiercer. Kamikaze attacks increase. The Hellcat proves itself again and again, not because it outturns the 0, but because American pilots learn to exploit its strengths and hide its weaknesses. Burnell flies 62 combat missions. He is credited with 7 confirmed kills. 5 of them come from underslung spirals. He is promoted to lieutenant junior grade. He receives the Distinguished Flying Cross. He never speaks about the tactic in interviews. In January 1945, his squadron is rotated stateside. Burnell returns to San Diego. He is assigned as a flight instructor. He teaches new pilots how to dive, how to shoot, how to survive. He does not teach the underslung spiral. When students ask about it, he tells them it's dangerous and not recommended. But privately in one-on-one sessions, he walks a few through the mechanics. He emphasizes the risks. He makes them promise not to attempt it without altitude and experience. Some listen, some don't. One crashes during a training flight, attempting the maneuver too low and too slow. Burnell attends the funeral. He stops teaching it after that. The war ends in August. Burnell is discharged in October. He returns to Oregon. He enrolls in college on the GI Bill. He studies engineering. He marries his wife in a quiet ceremony. He never flies again. For years, the underslung spiral exists only in oral tradition. It appears in no training manual, no official document. Fighter tactics evolve. Jets replace propeller aircraft. The maneuver fades. But in 1951, a Navy analyst named Commander Paul Thorne is compiling a study of World War II air combat tactics. He reviews thousands of gun camera films, pilot reports, and after-action debriefs. He notices a pattern, a recurring maneuver in Hellcat engagements over the Philippines. Steep dive, sharp recovery, climbing attack from below. Thorne tracks down the pilots who used it. Most are civilians now. A few are still in the service. He interviews them. Several mention Burnell. Thorne locates Burnell in Portland. He writes him a letter. Burnell replies. They meet for coffee. Thorne asks Burnell to explain the maneuver. Burnell does. He draws diagrams on a napkin. He talks about airspeed, G-load, angle of attack. He explains that the maneuver only works because the 0 pilot expects a climbing fight. The dive disrupts that expectation. The spiral creates a brief window, 2 or 3 seconds, when the Hellcat is rising and the 0 is still reacting. Thorne asks if Burnell invented it intentionally. Burnell laughs. He says he screwed up and got lucky. Thorne includes the maneuver in his report. He credits Burnell by name. The report is classified and filed away. It will not be declassified until 1973. The ripple effect of Burnell's mistake is difficult to quantify. There is no single memo that credits the underslung spiral with changing the course of the Pacific Air War. No medal ceremony, no dramatic speech. But the numbers tell a story. Between November 1944 and February 1945, Hellcat kill ratios in the Philippine theater increase measurably. Pilots report higher success rates in close-range engagements. More Zeros are destroyed in vertical fights. Fewer Hellcats are lost to turning dogfights. Fighter doctrine evolves. Pilots are encouraged to exploit vertical maneuvers. Dive and zoom tactics are refined. The underslung spiral becomes one of several tools in a growing tactical repertoire. The innovation is not singular, it is cumulative. Burnell's maneuver is one thread in a larger tapestry of adaptation, experimentation, and survival. But it is a thread that holds. In the decades after the war, fighter tactics continued to emphasize vertical energy management. The principles Burnell stumbled upon, using gravity and surprise to offset an opponent's maneuverability, become foundational in jet combat. The spiral itself is obsolete, but the logic endures. Modern fighter pilots train in simulators that model energy states, dive angles, and G-tolerance. They learn to attack from below, from above, from angles their instructors call unorthodox. They do not know Burnell's name, but they fly in the shadow of his mistake. Robert Burnell dies in 2001. He is 77 years old. He passes quietly, in his sleep, in a suburban home outside Portland. His obituary is brief. It mentions his service in the Navy. It lists his wife, his 3 children, his career as a civil engineer. It does not mention the underslung spiral. Most of his family never knew about it, but in a storage box in his attic, his children find a folder. Inside are letters from pilots he never met. Men who flew Hellcats over Iwo Jima, over Okinawa, over the Japanese home islands. Men who heard about the maneuver and used it. Men who survived because of it. One letter, dated 1946, thanks Burnell for saving his life. The writer explains that he attempted an underslung spiral during a fight over Tokyo Bay. It worked. He went home, he got married, he had a son. The letter ends with a single sentence, "You gave me a future." Burnell never replied, but he kept the letter. War is often remembered through the famous, the aces, the generals, the aircraft that became legends. But war is also shaped by the quiet ones. The ones who make mistakes and survive them. The ones who notice what others miss and act on it without waiting for permission. Burnell did not set out to change anything. He set out to survive. In doing so, he gave others the tools to do the same. History does not always remember the innovators, but it carries their work forward. The underslung spiral is gone. The Hellcat is gone. The war itself is gone. But the logic remains. The courage remains. The idea that survival is not just luck or firepower. It is also adaptability, instinct, and the willingness to fall toward danger and pull out at the last possible second. Robert Burnell was not a hero in the cinematic sense. He was a 20-year-old kid who misjudged a dive and refused to quit. He gave the war a tactic it didn't know it needed. He gave dozens of pilots a chance they wouldn't have had. He gave his wife a husband, his children a father. And in the end, that is the legacy that matters most. Not the kills, not the medal, not the maneuver. The future.